Today, we're talking about toys. You know, these cute, collectible, sometimes monster-like dolls that have just exploded from a niche hobby into this massive multi-billion-dollar industry. But here's the thing. Behind the adorable faces and that thrill of the surprise, there's a huge debate brewing about whether this is just harmless fun or if it's actually a hidden form of gambling.
To really get a sense of just how big this craze is, look at this number. That's 193,000 Singapore dollars. And no, that's not for a fancy car or a down payment on an apartment. That was the winning bid for a single human-sized Labubu toy at an auction in Beijing. Yeah, when a toy starts selling for luxury car prices, you know something really big is going on.
And this is the company right at the center of it all. Pop Mart. They're the ones behind those super popular Labubu dolls, and their market value is hovering around $40 billion US. So this isn't just some toy company anymore, right? They're a global entertainment giant, and they've built this empire on the simple but powerful idea of surprise. It just goes to show you how much money is riding on the unknown. So how in the world did we get here? How did these little figures become so popular, so valuable? Okay, let's dive into this and really unpack the mechanics behind the whole mania.
You know, the concept itself is brilliantly simple. A blind box is exactly what it sounds like. You buy a box, but you have no idea which character from a collection is actually inside. The whole appeal is the mystery, that anticipation, that little rush you get when you finally open it up and see what you got. You're not just buying a thing, you're buying a feeling, that moment of discovery.
And this business model is absolutely everywhere now. Of course, you've got the dedicated brands like Pop Mart with their Labubu figures, or the Sunny Angels, which are also huge. But it's gone so mainstream. I mean, fast food places like KFC, even supermarkets like FairPrice have all jumped on the trend, offering their own blind boxes. It's moved right out of the toy stores and into our everyday lives.
And a huge, huge part of this global explosion? Celebrity power. I mean, when superstars like Blackpink's Lisa or Rihanna get photographed holding these toys, they instantly transform from just a collectible into a global status symbol. That kind of publicity is something you just can't buy, and it's what propelled brands like Pop Mart into the stratosphere.
But with this kind of massive success, you're gonna get intense scrutiny. And the very thing that makes these blind boxes so addictive, that element of chance, is also what has regulators all over the world getting pretty worried. It raises a really serious question. At what point does a fun collection blur into gambling?
So here's the core of the problem for regulators. Think about it. With a normal purchase, it's straightforward. You see a thing, you know its value, and you buy it. Simple. But with a blind box, you're paying for a chance to get the item you really want, especially that rare one. The value of what you bought is determined by pure luck, not certainty. This taps into the same exact psychological mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. It's called intermittent reinforcement. Because the reward is unpredictable, our brains get a bigger hit of dopamine, which makes us want to try again and again. And to a regulator, that looks an awful lot like a lottery.
And it's not just regulators who are worried. State media, like China's People's Daily, have been raising these exact alarms. They're concerned that this model encourages people to buy stuff just hoping it'll be worth more later. That it can become addictive as people chase those rare secret items, and that it poses a real risk to young consumers who might not really get the odds or the danger of overspending.
So, faced with all these concerns, governments aren't just sitting on the sidelines. They're actually starting to act, creating new rules for a market that, let's be honest, barely existed a decade ago. And different countries are taking very different approaches.
And this isn't some sudden reaction. The writing has been on the wall for years. Way back in 2018, Singapore already cracked down on those mystery prize machines. Then, in 2023, China put formal guidelines into place. And now, Singapore has announced it's rolling out specific blind box regulations by 2026. The trend is crystal clear. More rules are on the way.
Now, China is a massive, massive market for these things, and they've taken a particularly firm stance, mostly because they're worried about the impact on young people. In fact, the main newspaper of the Communist Party even ran a whole feature calling for stricter controls.
So, China's approach is super direct. They identified the group most at risk, very young kids, and just drew a hard line in the sand. By banning sales to anyone under 8 years old, they put in a clear, protective rule. They're trying to prevent that potential for addiction before it even has a chance to start. Singapore, on the other hand, is taking a different path, though it's just as serious. Instead of an outright ban for a certain age, their plan is all about giving the consumer more information. The goal here is transparency.
So, led by the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Gambling Regulatory Authority, their big idea is to force sellers to just tell you the odds. Can you imagine? You pick up a blind box, and right there on the package it says, chance of getting the rare item, 1 in 100. The thinking is, if you know the actual probability, you can make a more rational decision, instead of just buying based on hope.
So where does this all leave us? You've got this booming, really innovative market on one side, and then you've got these totally legitimate concerns about protecting consumers on the other. And that's really the central conflict that's going to shape the future of this whole industry.
And make no mistake, this market is not slowing down. It was valued at over $11 billion back in 2021, and is projected to more than double to over $24 billion by 2033. This isn't just a fad, it's a fundamental change in how we shop, which means these questions about regulation are only going to get more and more urgent.
And this brings us right back to the fundamental challenge, doesn't it? How can companies keep creating these exciting new products that people clearly love, while regulators make sure that the most vulnerable consumers are protected? It's a really delicate balancing act, with billions and billions of dollars hanging in the balance.
Ultimately, it leaves all of us with this one powerful question. I mean, these products are fun, they build communities, they create real excitement, but as the line between a collectible toy and what feels like a lottery ticket gets blurrier and blurrier, we all, as consumers, companies, and governments, have to decide, where exactly should we draw that line?